Well, my name is Danny Etchell. I'm going to be doing a short little presentation here for the topic of desertification of farmland in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. So first off, what is desertification? Desertification is the process by which natural or human caused causes reduces the biological productivity of dry lands. Basically, what it means is that if if whether it's natural or human caused, the the amount of plants growing on the land is greatly decreased. So there's some very broad causes for it: climate change, deforestation, overgrazing, unsustainable water usage. Um, you also throw in just poor farming practices in there too. Um, Mining is another big one too. But there's a there's a lot of different causes of it, and each area has specific causes. Um, it's and you can never just have one answer for what is desertification and what causes it. So it's the impact of desertification. First off, it decreases the soil productivity. It's hard to grow good crops on land that's being impacted by desertification. The overall vegetation growing on the land is decreased because of desertification. Um, if you look at a desert, there's hardly anything growing area there compared to even just areas that are right next to deserts. There's usually a lot more plants growing. Um, Overall food production of the region is greatly decreased if it is undergoing desertification. Um, and because of that, also there's a lot less job opportunities because there's less uh, less jobs in the agricultural area. Um, a lot of people get displaced in desertification. Not all of it is directly caused from the desertification itself. Sometimes, actually, a lot of times, it can be from conflict spurred on by desertification and the increasing poverty and just overall bad situation that kind of can cause people to fight. And then, like I said, increases conflict. So, so how does it look on the map? So on this map here, you'll see the areas that are at risk of desertification and also the existing deserts. You can spot the desert there in the American Southwest. You can spot the Saharan, the Gobi Desert there in China. Um, those areas really can't do too much about it at this point. There's not much farming going on there unless it's heavily irrigated. Um, the red areas are the ones that we're concerned about. Specifically, for this presentation, it'll be that Sub-Saharan Africa, so down below the Sahara, and then also in South Asia. So, so in South Asia, I'm going to mainly focusing on two countries, and that'll be India and Pakistan. Um, Afghanistan also does face desertification, but it's not as severe or it's not as great of an impact to their economies and also the world of agriculture in as it is in Pakistan and India. So for India, there has been the risk of desertification has been always increasing a lot, but especially since 2003. Um, Overall, currently in India, there are 97.85 million hectares of land that is under the threat of desertification. Um, this is mostly on the eastern side of the country, and because the western side tends to get a lot more rainfall. So the causes mainly in India are from farming on marginal land, deforestation, and mining. So recently, the past few decades, unfortunately, there's been a lot of marginal land that wasn't farmed in the past that's been being brought into agriculture, and that is really hurting the or it's really increased the rate of desertification in India. Desert or deforestation, just chopping down all trees. It's not good for soil health. We do that, and then of course mining. You're being very disruptive to the soil. Um, so the overall effects in India, the their GDP loss has been estimated to be about 2.5%. May not sound like a bunch, but that is a lot of money overall. Um, Many people have been dispersed by identification in India. I don't have any exact numbers, unfortunately, but according to the official reports, they seen many people being displaced. Saw a large increase amount of people dropping out of high school as well, which that's of course not a good thing. Um, Tends to increase the problem when people are uneducated about this stuff. Another big issue is salts in the water. This happens when basically all the water that had a small concentration of salt slowly gets concentrated into smaller areas. Um, that's why parts of South Dakota, the parent material is very salty. It's because way back in the day when there was a giant inland sea, it kind of dried up in South Dakota. So that's how we got salt concentration. Um, since back to India, then also they've had a loss of jobs there, unfortunately. Um, so now I'm going to Pakistan. Overall, Pakistan has a lot of land that's at risk of desertification. 78.4% of all the land in Pakistan is at risk of desertification. This is a lot. There are quite a few causes for it as well. Water erosion, overgrazing, and poor farming practices. So when it comes to water erosion, that has a lot to do with the how a lot of these countries in Southern Asia get their water. They tend to have a monsoon season where they get a lot of water and then they're dry for the rest of the year. And so unfortunately, during that monsoon season, there's a lot of soil erosion that happens. Overgrazing, that's pretty self-evident. If you remove all the plant material, there's less stuff to hold the soil in place, so you get soil erosion, which leads to desertification. The poor farming practices, unfortunately, due to how mountainous many parts of Pakistan are, um, people have started farming some of these very hilly terrains, and that, of course, is just not good for overall health of that soil. The overall effects on Pakistan. Um, the currently 2/3 of the population in Pakistan are very, very heavily dependent on this land that is at high risk desertification. Um, Overall, the poverty rate in Pakistan has been rising greatly over the uh, last few decades. In some areas, they are running into issues with groundwater just because they're using too much of it um, for irrigating some crops or for cities. And then Pakistan is also having the same water in their salt in their water issues that India was having. Um, Same cause, just using too much water, not sustainably. And also Pakistan has been seeing a decline in the amount of jobs in the rural communities. So overall, for combating desertification in South Asia, they really need to start planting some drought tolerant perennial crops. That would help out greatly. Basically anything that can help hold that soil in place and keep biodiversity present helps a lot. The first step in becoming a desert is to lose all your plants. um, so another thing, you need to plant trees and shrubs. That will greatly help with wind erosion. If you can get some taller trees out there, especially evergreens, help cut down the wind in the area. They should also be encouraging practices that increase the soil organic matter in any of the farmland. Um, Here in the United States, you see a lot of people switching over to no-till in some of the drier areas, and it's for the exact same reason. You want to help keep the moisture in the soil and also keep the soil uh, there and not eroding away. Um, then, like I said earlier, big thing in Pakistan is they need to reduce the farming on their highly erodible terrains. They need to be much more careful about farming on mountains or grazing on mountains, as that's where you can have a lot of erosion is on those steep terrains. So now move on to Sub-Saharan Africa. There are many countries that are at high risk of desertification here, so I'm not going to go over specifically a single countries. I will mention some countries by name just because they are like having some big issues from it. But overall, I'm covering kind of the whole region as a whole. And the region I'm going to be covering in particular is the Sahel region, which is basically it's the border between the Saharan desert to the north and all the grasslands and rainforests to the south. This area is unfortunately has suffered a lot from desertification, and it's had a lot of bad consequences on the area. Over the last 100 years, the Saharan desert has expanded about 10% over the last 100 years. Most of that expansion has been south into the Sahel region. That's mostly because to the north, east, and west, it's pretty much up against the ocean, so it can't really go anywhere else. Some countries have been much more greatly impacted by desertification than others. This includes Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. So, overall, this is kind of a bad situation. There's a lot of people suffering because of desertification in this region. From 1968 to 1985, there was a big famine, and there's no exact number, but it was estimated that a little over 100 million people died during this famine, and there were millions of people displaced from their homes. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of poverty in this region, which has led to a lot of conflict. There's quite a few terrorist organizations and stuff that basically pry on people that are poor to try and increase their numbers, and so there's a lot of infighting in the region as well over resources. The overall poverty rate in the Sahel region is 76.1%. You can probably guess that's pretty high. Just in the Burkina Faso country alone, there was 1.1 million people displaced just purely due to desertification and the knock-on effects from it. So, some causes of desertification in the Sahel region have been illegal farming practices of protected land. This has been especially true the last couple of years, and it has greatly accelerated desertification in certain areas. Another big cause has been deforestation. That is, as I've said before, cutting down plants is bad for the soil, which then if you remove plants from the soil, you're going to encourage desertification. Another thing is poor farming practices. Um, Constantly tilling up the soil is bad for the soil moisture, which then um, encourages desertification. Um, Another big thing is just poor water management. Um, they need to maintain the very limited amount of moisture they have, and you don't want to waste it. So there are some solutions to desertification in this region. Um, First off, they need to bring biodiversity back to soil. They need to get some grasses planted back. They need to get trees growing again. They need to try and use techniques to capture the rain, whether that be um, making trenches, ponds, dams, anything to capture the very limited amount of water they have so they can use it later. Um, and then another big thing is replanting the forests, because unfortunately in this region there was a lot of deforestation, and that the deforestation was in part for fuel, and also a lot of it was to make room for farmland. And unfortunately, if they want to prevent desertification from making all of that farmland useless, they're going to have to replant the forests to some extent. So here is a example of a project that's actually been going on for a while now. And it's called the Great Green Wall Initiative. It was started in 2007, and by 2030, it is anticipated to have saved 250 million acres from desertification. Um, as you can see, the goal is basically create a big wall from Eastern Africa to Western Africa with basically a big strip of a forest. Um, so far, it has greatly improved countries, especially uh, Burkina Faso and also Niger. So, some final statements here. Overall, we are doing a good job of trying to fight against desertification. It is still unfortunately increasing, but in certain areas we are managing to slow it down greatly. Um, in order to help protect against it, we really need to encourage sustainable agricultural practices, especially in these high-risk areas like the Sahel, Southern Asia, and also all the other areas that on that map earlier that were in red. Our big thing, don't lose hope, don't give up. If we give up, that's just going to win anyways, so we got to keep fighting against it. So thank you very much for watching this video. And, thanks again.